Porsche 911 is 50 years old, but what makes this car the most famous sports car in the world, and why is it so special? Well, the best way to find out is to come here to the secret storage unit of the Porsche Museum and get Porsche to unwrap some of their prized historic 911s and let us drive them. Okay, so this is where it all began. So this is a 1964 2-litre short wheelbase 911. It's obviously a 6-cylinder 2-litre, 130 brake horsepower, and it's just absolute privilege to drive this car. Very appropriately, we're leaving the Porsche Museum here at Zuffenhausen and the Porsche Factory. So to our left here is the very factory where this car was made. Understandably, Porsche are very nervous about the value of these cars, so we're following an instructor and we're going to drive across the German countryside to Weissach, where this car was tested, where all 911s were tested when they were new. It's just a joy to drive this car. I can't imagine what this must have felt like when it came out in 1963 and 1964. It must have just been an absolute revelation, this car, because even today, 50 years after it was made, it still feels like a quick car, even in modern terms. So as I say, it's a 2-litre engine, but obviously it's a boxer engine, so you've got that amazing sound that has lived with the 911 for 50 years. It just sounds incredible. But this generation of 911 lasted for 11 years. There was a host of changes. The wheelbase grew, the engine size eventually grew all the way up to 2.7 litres for the 1973 RS model. And there was a constant evolution with this car. And you feel a real sense of engagement with the road, and that's really what made the 911 so famous. And I think that's going to be something we're going to experience as we drive each of the generations today. This is a 1974 2.7 SC Coupe. Now this car is one of the first of the G series, the second generation of 911s. It has the same 2.7 litre engine as the legendary 2.7 litre RS. Much wider tyres, there's so much more grip. There's a lot less play in the steering. It just feels so much more alive, so much more grip, so much more confidence inspiring. Still no power steering, but there's a lovely natural feel to the steering. And the engine is just same sound, but so much more urgent. So the throttle response in this car is just incredible. So once you press the throttle past 3,500, it just wants to keep going all the way to the 7,000 red line. It's just such a beautiful car. It's absolutely undiluted engagement with the road. So in 1989 saw the third generation of 911 launched, this generation, the 964. Now in this generation saw a whole host of firsts. It was the first 911 to have 4-wheel drive, first with ABS, and also the first to have safety features like airbags and real modern features. The car that we're driving is actually a 30th anniversary car from 1993. So it's a wide-bodied car that looks like a turbo, but actually it's just a normal engine, but it looks like a turbo. Amazingly though, given this car was in the 90s, the interior still looks very similar in shape and layout to the original car 30 years previously. But it drives a lot different. It still feels like a 911, you can feel the lineage, but there's a lot more grip, much bigger platform of tyre on the road. Gearbox is much slicker. Obviously we've got power steering, powered brakes, so you can really see the car still retains that lineage, but it's really moving into the modern times.
After a brief stop at Porsche's Weissach test and motorsport facility, where we weren't allowed to film because of the secret cars lapping the test track, we jumped into the next 911 for our return journey to the museum.
So now we're into the 993 generation 911. This was launched in 1994, and it saw the biggest change in the exterior body design. The car's much bigger, but driving it still feels, you still get that same sense of wriggling and body transfer and weight transfer and movement. All the delicious feelings you get from all the earlier cars are still in this car, but it saw a big upgrade in terms of engines as well in this generation. This car's a 1996 with a Targa Roof. Now the Targa Roof was introduced way back in the first generation 911, and it's a concept that's gone through each generation. This one also has the Tiptronic gearbox that was launched in the 964 generation. So it's a big step up in technology. So we've got an automatic gearbox, we've got powered windows, we've got ABS, power steering, But again, that 911 spirit is still here. Launched in 1998, this car was probably the biggest step towards the modern 911 that we see today. The 996 was all new. Everything about this car was completely new. The only thing it shared with the 993 was the fact it was a 911 and that the engine was at the rear. Its biggest change was the fact that Porsche switched from air-cooled engines to water-cooled engines. But any fears that that would take away some of the character were dispelled by this car, because it's just an amazing engine. As you can hear there, revs to 7,000 RPM. Just an incredible engine, and this car really took a big leap forward in terms of the interior, the dynamics and everything. Really moved the 911 into the modern age. Now, I remember driving this car when it was new and it blew me away, and I have to say, driving it 10 years later, it would still show a clean pair of heels to plenty of modern sports cars. But it's a mark of how much the 997 and the brand new 991 have moved on, that this car actually feels quite antiquated compared to them, and that's really what the 911's been about. Over the last 50 years, this car hasn't stopped evolving, and it remains one of the most remarkable sports cars in the world. And getting to drive some of the earlier ones today has been a real privilege. After the 996 came this car, the 997, which itself has just been replaced by the new 991. And I can only imagine how good future generations of Porsche 911 are going to be by the time the 991 is here in the museum under wraps.